We read there in Deuteronomy chapter 6, and I assume that you do that each week, where it says, "Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our Elohim, Yahweh is one. You shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all of your heart and all your soul and with all of your strength. And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently to your children." It says diligently to your children. The most important responsibility that we have as a parent or grandparent or caregiver of children, and by the way, you don't have to be a parent or a grandparent or a caregiver of children to be a diligent teacher to them, because some of the best things that I learned in my life were from people that had absolutely no tie to me and family. You know, these were good people who I was around, but the greatest responsibility that we have to our children or grandchildren or those in our care or those around us is that I think that we would be diligent teachers to them, that we'd be diligent teachers. We have a great obligation to our children. Can we agree with that? I have a great obligation. The definition of obligation, by the way, is an act or a course of action to which a person is morally or legally bound, a duty or a commitment. That's what that means. You shall teach them diligently to your children, the Bible says. So we have a great obligation to our children, and the first obligation to our children or those children around us is what I just read, that we would be a diligent teacher to them. For any wordsmiths who may be out here, you know, the Bible was written to us in words, and we know, of course, that it wasn't written in English. There's a very interesting word. I'd studied this text for much of my adult life and never really saw this or never really knew this, but where this here in verse 7, where it says, "You shall teach them diligently to your children," this word that's pronounced, that's translated as diligent teacher, is a Hebrew word, and the word is shanan is the word. Isn't it funny to hear somebody with a deeply Appalachian accent say Hebrew words to you? Let me tell you what it means. It's used 9 times in the Bible, and this is the only place in the Bible where it's translated like this, as a diligent teacher. Let me tell you what the word means. It means to sharpen. In particular, it means to sharpen, like to whet. Now, everybody in here know what a whet rock is? Seen my granddaddy sharpen an axe and sharpen a knife on a whet rock. Now people have fancy rods and stuff that they sharpen knives with, but it's a word that means to sharpen, or it means to whet. And why it's translated as teach diligently in the King James Bible, I'm not sure, but I think it misses some of the meaning of the original text. And I want to try to explain to you why I think that. When we think about this idea of an obligation to our children to be a diligent teacher, I'm a pocket knife guy. Anybody pocket knife guy in here? I know Brother Wesley is. I guarantee you he's got a pocket knife on him right now. I'm about guarantee you that look at there, pocket knives coming out all over, switchblade coming out back there. I'm going to put mine up, brother. I'm a pocket knife kind of guy, and I always have been. These are a very handy tool to have. I've used pocket knife for everything from skinning deer to cutting my fingernails to who knows what. There's been a few times that I wish I had my pocket knife on me and I didn't. But I've learned, and most of the time now, if I hear people say, if I got pants on, I got a pocket knife. Well, I generally do. And sometimes, even when I don't, I have a pocket knife on me. By the way, I don't think anybody makes a knife except Case. I think the Case knife is the only kind of knife made. I was very disappointed in Murphy, North Carolina. Sorry for those of y'all that live there, Clinton. Downtown Murphy, saw a big old Case knife sign on the store, and I said, got to go in there and check that out. And they had about 3 Case knives in there. I was very disappointed. Here's what I've learned from carrying a knife for my entire life. I've learned a lot of things. I've learned that the most dangerous kind of knife is a dull knife. Right? The most dangerous kind of knife is a dull knife. A dull knife's dangerous. It's ineffective. A dull knife is a worthless knife. A dull knife's a hammer. And that's all that you can really use it for. I want to be able to count on my knife because you never do know when you need it. And if I want to be able to count on my knife to be ready for me when I need it, this is what I know, and this is what I want to try to share with you. And remember, I'm not trying to teach you about knives. I'm trying to teach you about teaching your children. But if I want this knife to work for me when I need for it to, then this is what I have to be willing to do. I have to be willing to invest a little bit of time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears sometimes into keeping this knife sharp. Why? So that it'll be usable, so that it won't be dangerous, so that it'll do the job that it's meant to do. And so I need to take the time to make sure it's sharp. And when I think of sharpening a knife, I think about my granddaddy. Me and my brother and sister were raised by my grandparents, and my granddaddy could very often be found sharpening knives because he believed knife's supposed to be sharp. And he had a great big wet rock, and he would put a couple drops of oil in the thing, and he would work and work and work and work. This is what he told me, and this is important for your children, but this is what he told me about a sharp knife. He said the secret to a sharp knife is to not let it get too dull. Does that make sense? Makes sense for a knife, right? Can I tell you it makes sense for our children? If the secret is to not let them get too dull, right? And sometimes if you I said I've used my knife for all sorts of things, but sometimes they do get dull. I've used a knife as an electrical tester before by accident, and can I tell you it takes a long time to work that hole out of a blade. I would have been much smarter to use electrical tester than my pocket knife, right? Sometimes, though, when the blade gets bad, you have to spend a whole lot of time straightening that thing out. Isn't that true for our children? Listen, we have a responsibility for our children to teach them in such a way that they don't get so far out of bounds. You understand? You picking up while I'm laying down? They don't get so far out of bounds that it takes us so much effort to bring them back in line. And but here's sharpening a knife is like teaching children, and I'll try to share it with you as best I can. To get a knife sharp or to get a child sharp, it takes, first of all, it takes just exactly the right amount of pressure. Right? I mean, you can't just go hunkering down. Can I say hunkering? I can say hunkering down up here. To Yuns. I went to a restaurant and somebody said, "How are Yuns doing this morning?" I said, "Well, I'm glad to be back home." How are Yuns doing? To sharpen a knife, you have to use just exactly the right amount of pressure. You can't just bear down on that thing. You know, and each blade is a little different. You know, if you got more than one child, let me tell you this, some of them take a little more pressure than the others. You know what I mean? I mean, there's some of them that a light stroke just not necessarily going to work. Y'all follow me, right? I mean, some of them you might have to get the bench grinder out every now and then just to bring them back in line. But it takes pressure, doesn't it? It takes just exactly the right amount of pressure. It takes just exactly the right angle. It takes just exactly the right amount of time. Any of y'all ever sharpen a knife and boy, you know, and this is the test for me. I always sharpen it and I say, you know, I want that knife to shave me. And boy, it's right there on the edge, and I think about 2 or 3 more licks and it's going to be right. 2 or 3 more licks and that thing wouldn't cut. Butter. You know, I should have quit while I was ahead. See, it takes just the right amount of pressure, just the right angle, right? Just exactly the right amount of time to get the kind of edge that you want. And listen, I'm telling you, that is so true with our children. And I'll tell you what else it takes. It takes this. Don't miss this. It takes consistency. Y'all, right? You follow me, right? You can't hit it 2 or 3 licks and it's going to be right. You know, and you can't pick it up once every 6 months and try to sharpen it and wonder why in the world this thing won't cut hot butter. And yet, and I'm not saying you, but potentially you, this is how a lot of people treat their children. You know, they let them go and do whatever they want until they embarrass them in Walmart. And then they want to bring them in line. Well, you ain't called that young'un down in the last 6 months, and now, you know, you want them to come in line because somebody sees you and you're embarrassed by them? Wouldn't it be easier just to be consistent? Light pressure. You hear me? And by the way, I'm not saying be mean to your kids. I think, you know, what I'm saying is, though, is that as parents or grandparents or caregivers of children, you have the obligation to make sure that your children are being raised the right way. It's not your pastor or youth pastor or whoever else's responsibility. It's your responsibility as a parent or as a caregiver. Amen? And I know that's hard to hear and it's hard to say, but the truth of the matter is it's the truth. And that's your obligation, that you would be a diligent teacher to these children. Number one obligation, because here's what we're trying to do. Listen, you can do the best for your children or children in your care. You can give them all the best stuff and the nicest clothes and give them the best education and buy them new cars and do all the things in the world. But if you have not prepared them to be an effective tool in Yahweh's kingdom, you've done them a disservice. They'd have been better off to have been raised by somebody else. Right? Well, how do you do that? So, preacher, well, that's easy for you to say, but, you know, how do we do this? Well, it's right. I think it's right here in the text how we do that. Look there in that 7th verse, Deuteronomy 6 and 7, where it says, you shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise up. Can I say this to you this morning? Never, ever miss an opportunity. Never miss an opportunity to teach your children things about Yahweh. And you say, and by the way, this place and on Sabbath and come in here, and this is great and well and good, but this should be like the cherry on top of what you've done all week long for your children. Never, ever miss an opportunity. This life is full of teachable moments. Anybody agree? If there's anybody in here more than 25 years old, you know that. Life is full of teachable moments. We just drove up here 20 hours from Central Texas Monday night. And when the sun came up, we were in Alabama, I guess. Sun came up in Alabama. And I got to looking around, and I know we're a couple weeks kind of late for fall color, but I was amazed because it's been some time since we've seen, I mean, where we live, fall color is brown. That's it. There is no red, no yellow, there's no orange. And we're riding up 59 up through there, and it's just beautiful, and it's taking my breath. And I'm looking at that, and this is all I can think. I'm thinking, How in the world can someone see this and not believe that there's a Creator who made all of those things? You follow me? And you take it for granted here because you see it. How can you drive by any of these big beautiful rivers or these lakes that are up here and look at that and not say, boy, there's something bigger than me at work in this thing? You know, how can you watch the sun come up or see the sun go down or any of a million different things that happen in your life? These are not miracles. These are just your everyday events. And every one of those things is a teachable moment for your child. Every one. You need to tell them about the sun coming up and the sun going down. You need to teach them about the seasons. You can look up at night and you can see the stars and you can see the moon. And listen, our Heavenly Father created all that stuff with His spoken word. He just said it and it was. And if that's not enough to teach your children, I don't know what to tell you. But listen, that stuff is all around us. And if you think for 1 second that there's not something in the world to teach your children spiritual lessons, then you need to open your eyes and look around. We agree? I mean, there's so much to see and there's so much to do. Teach them when they lie down and when they sit up. Listen, every day we need to be teaching them these things. And if you don't have those things, wake your kids up early and make them go somewhere and watch the sun come up. Make them stay up and watch the sun go down. I love it over there in Hosea, about chapter 6, I think it is, somewhere along about there. There's a scripture that's talking about Yahweh, and it says, your going forth is as the morning sun. And I read that and I say, this is what that means. It means you're as faithful as the sun is to come up every day. You get that? Boy, and there's a lesson we can teach our children. I've been on this earth almost 20,000 days and the sun's come up every day. And I know it's going to come up tomorrow. Even if I don't see it, I know it's going to be there. That's a lesson that you can teach your children. Life is full of lessons. And you know, and so creation and sunrises and sunsets and the things that we do here, you know, you just came out of Feast of Tabernacles a couple of weeks ago. Teach your children, that's not a 7-day, 8-day camping trip. It's much more than that. Listen, those are the lessons that you need to be teaching your children. I see all these kids and dare say there's more coming. You know, teach your children about birth. The other end of that is teach your children about death. Because as we saw the question that was up there this morning, you know, I mean, ultimately, none of us are getting out of this thing alive, are we? And everything that we do here is reflected in eternity. Teach your children those things when they rise up and when they sit down. Never, ever miss an opportunity to teach your children. Never stop teaching. Never stop sharpening. Be consistent every day. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? My mic on? Okay. Just make sure. So the first obligation you have to your children is that you'd be a diligent teacher. And we all amen. And everybody say amen. Amen. Diligent teacher. Now I'm gonna meddle just a little bit. Can I meddle? I'm going to anyway, unless Luke turns my mic off. I'm going to meddle a little bit because here's what I need to tell you. I need to tell you that before you can be a diligent teacher to your children, before that, you first have to be a diligent learner. Diligent learner. Everybody in Deuteronomy 6, did I even tell you where I was preaching from? Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 1. Let's back up a little bit. You can tell I'm not a Baptist preacher anymore, by the way. My points are not in order, you know. I didn't put the cart before the horse. Chapter 6, verse 1. We'll amen that diligent teacher part, but here's the part I want you to see. Now this is the commandment, and these are the statutes and the judgments which Yahweh your Elohim has commanded to teach you. Everybody got that? Say to teach you. Okay. So before we can be diligent teachers, we have to be diligent learners. I have a friend back in Texas who is known to say very eloquent sayings. And this is kind of say, and I don't know if this is always necessarily word for it, but this is kind of what he said a few weeks ago. He said, you can only do what you know to do, and you can't do what you don't know to do. Doesn't that make sense? Brilliant. Wasn't it? You can only do what you know to do, and you can't do what you don't know to do. We can't teach what we don't know to do, can we? Well, you can try, but you'd be a hypocrite. And by the way, your children are going to recognize that right off the bat. Psalms 25, you don't have to turn there, but you can if you want. Psalms 25, 4 and 5 says this, show me your ways, O Yahweh. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me. For you are the Elohim of my salvation. On you I will wait all day. Did y'all get that? Boy, that's my prayer for you, and that's my prayer for me, that Yahweh might teach us in that way. And by the way, I'll say this. I have studied the Bible for the biggest part of my adult life. I've studied the Bible. And you know, up until a few years ago, I thought I knew this book pretty good. But the last 3, 4, 5 years, really 3 years, for us have been very eye-opening for me in terms of things I've learned from Scripture. And there's so many things that I have seen in Scripture in the last few years that I can't unsee. Does anybody know what I'm saying when I say that? And some of the most important things that I've learned from the Bible are things that I learned after I thought I knew it all. You know what I'm saying when I say that? And it's so important for us that we learn Yahweh's Word because, and Brother Jeremy kind of hit on this in the feast lesson up here, in learning Yahweh's Word, we learn Yahweh, don't we? In learning His Word, we study Scripture, and in doing so, we study Yahweh. Okay, we learn about His thoughts, and we learn about His character, and we learn about His promises, and we learn the things that the Bible says He loves and the things that He hates, and that's what we do by learning Scripture. And if we're to be holy as He is holy, as we're commanded to do, then we have to learn His Word, because this is how we learn Him, isn't it? It's how we learn Him. Here's the problem, and I know the problem. You say, well, preacher, you don't know how busy my day is, or you don't know what I got going on, or how hard I work, or you don't know this, or you don't know that, and I don't know any of those things, but this is what I do know. I think that the problem for many people in painting with a broad brush, for many people in learning Scripture, learning Yahweh's Word, I think the problem for many people is that they're just so busy, just running and gunning. And if you work and if you have kids, I know what it's like. You know, you work from daylight to dark, and you come home and you just fall over in the recliner, you know, and mom's running kids. You know, if you got kids, you're taking them to ball practice and gymnastics and cheerleading, a million different places. I mean, it's a hard job that you have. But this is what I also know. I also know that, and this hurts it's going to sting a little. But I also know this. I know that people make time for the things that are important to them. And I know that talking about how busy you are will not exclude you, because we've all got the same amount of time. You've got 1,440 minutes exactly in every day. 1,440, and if you do the math, you've got 10,800 minutes in every week. And this is what I'm going to say to you. I'm going to say, if you can't find the time somewhere in that to put some effort into learning Yahweh's Word, then as much as it pains me to say this, I'm going to say it, then you need to cut some things out of your life. You see, I can say these things because I'm just visiting. I'm not going to be here next week. And I'm not trying to be ugly. I mean, I'm trying to be realistic because I know what you're going through, you know. But 1,440 minutes in a day is you know, and by the way, if you take that number, and let's say you spend 30 minutes in Bible study in a day. Boy, 30 minutes for most of us, that's a half hour a day I spend studying the Bible. That sounds like a lot until you compare it to the 1,440 that Yahweh just gave to you, and you gave back to Him 30, you see. So anyway, I'm telling you, there's time. You just got to carve it out. You got to carve it out. But we need to be, we have to be learners. Never stop learning. Never stop learning. So we're to be diligent teachers of the Word, diligent learners of the Word. And I'm going to meddle even more. Can I meddle in some more? Margie said yes. And this is where the rubber meets the road, and this is where it hurts. We also have to be diligent doers. Diligent doers of the Word. Look at that verse 1. Did somebody say, come on? Come on. Michael said, come on. All right, you asked for it. Check this out. Don't miss this. Back to chapter 6, verse 1. This commandment and the statutes and the judgments Yahweh your Elohim has commanded to teach you. We got that part, right? Say, move on. Move on, preacher. Okay? Listen to this. That you may observe them in the land which you're crossing over to possess. This is what I'm going to teach you, he says, and I expect that you're going to do it. Does that make sense? Diligent doers of the Word. And by the, you know, this is the part of this message that makes me squirm a little bit. Because I realize, as I study this Word, I realize that Yahweh's standard for my conduct is way up here. And I know that sometimes I get kind of close to it, but I know sometimes I'm so far, I'm not even close. And I know what He wants, and I know what He expects of me, but sometimes I'm just totally missing it. And by the way, I told you I've been studying this Bible for most of my adult life, and I have. Knowing this book is not enough. Stay with me. Knowing this book is not enough. Because there's plenty of educated men, scholars and theologians and professors in all these different colleges and stuff, who can tell you everything about the Bible. They can talk to you about all the cultural stuff going on. They know all the ancient languages. They know this, they know that. They know a million different things. But at the end of the day, this is what they know. They know facts about this Bible. And can I tell you, you can memorize it from the cover to cover and it'll do you no good. The only part of this book that helps you or that helps me is the part that we choose to obey. Y'all with me, right? is the part that we choose to obey. And this is not man's book. You know, some guy didn't write this. We know that it was authored by men, but if we believe that this is Yahweh's word to us, and I pray that you do, and then we have to understand that we are under His authority and not our own. And that's what people don't really want sometimes. You know, they don't want to be under someone's authority, anyone's authority. I think that's what's wrong with a big part in our world today. That we don't want to be under authority, but I'm telling you, whether you believe this Bible or not, you are subject to Yahweh's authority. You will be one day, you see. But authority's not the problem. Here's the problem. The problem is our own stubborn hearts. Now, I don't know about you. I know about me. Let me rephrase that. My problem is my own stubborn heart, you see. Because you'd be hard-pressed to tell me something that I don't know is in the Bible. But there's some times that I just don't want to hear it. There's some times that I don't want to do it. There's some times that I just as soon not to know. You understand? And you know, it's that goat theology. Well, I know what it says, but I'm not going to do it. We are under Yahweh's authority, and to me, here's as simple as I know how to make it for me, is to say this to you, that I'm just silly enough to believe that if it's contained in this book, that we ought to try to do it to the best of our ability. And here's something that's relevant to us in this room today. Let me ask you, why are we meeting here on Saturday? And nearly everybody in our community is going to go down the road tomorrow. Why are we meeting here on Saturday to do that? Why do we try to eat clean? Right? You know, why do we try to keep these appointed times and feasts? And why do we do all of those things? And the answer, my brother, is this: simply. You know, this is the best theological answer I can give you. Because He said to. Because He said to. And you can try to make anything that you want out of those things. And you can say, well, but, you know, somebody did this, and but somebody did that, and but, you know, all these different things. But the truth is, if it says in here that you're supposed to do it, then we ought to do it. If it says in here that you're not supposed to do it, then we ought to try not to do it, right? I mean, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I mean, I got that part figured out. But again, I don't struggle with what it says. I struggle with doing what it says. Because I know what it says, but sometimes I just don't want to do it. I don't have a problem, by the way, with murder and robbing banks and lying. Those are not my thing. Most of us don't wake up and decide we're going to go rob a bank or kill somebody. I don't have issue with it. It's not those great big ones that I struggle with. But you know, I do think sometimes about some of the things that Yeshua said. And boy, He said some difficult things. Some things that sometimes I'm just not ready to deal with. Things like forgiveness. I don't want to forgive because I want justice for what that person done 15 years ago, and I can't even tell you what it was. See, I don't want to deal with that part of it sometimes. Loving my enemies, Not really in my nature. I mean, I'm being truthful with you. And by the way, I'm a different man than what my wife married 30 years ago, 32 years, long time ago. I'm a different man. And I still struggle with those things like loving enemies and turning the other cheek and praying for those that spitefully use me. I don't want to do those things. I'd rather slap them in the mouth. Y'all with me? But let me ask you this. Here's the problem with thinking like that. The problem is we like to weigh sin, don't we? And I like to look at Randall's and say, boy, his is way bigger than mine. But tell me, is unforgiveness a lesser sin than robbing a bank? No, it's not, sister. You know, is refusing to love my enemy a smaller sin than telling lies? No, isn't it all stinking, nasty, ugly sin? So see, y'all know how sorry I am now. By the way, much of that's probably done for dramatic interpretation. You agree, Rhonda? But I still get mad. Here's the two things that'll make me mad. Anger is my thing, and I have to fight it every day. I fight it every day. I do pretty good unless I go to Walmart and it's only self-checkouts open. Don't that make you mad? And then, well, two things. We drove out here in Texas, even on a 2-lane road where we live, the speed limit's 75 miles an hour. 75. And I'm coming up here on Highway 60. Some of y'all doing 60. And I'm fuming, wondering, why ain't you going faster? And in Texas, somebody get like 5 feet from my bumper and I'm losing it. You see, those are the things that I struggle with. And I say that to say this to you, that we've all got some junk in our backyard that we need to get cleaned up. Just because I'm standing up here trying to preach to you, I'm not perfect. I don't claim to be, and I never have been. I'm a man just like you. And I struggle with the same things that you struggle with. I don't struggle with knowing what the Bible says. I struggle with doing what the Bible says. Y'all with me? You know. And Yeshua kind of came to the heart of the whole thing when he said, you know, if you're mad enough at somebody, you just as well to kill them. Or if you look at a woman wrong, you just as well to cheat, you know. Didn't he? You see, he raised the standard by saying it's not necessarily what you do, it's the motive of your heart. You see. Turn to James chapter 1. James chapter 1. Y'all lucky I didn't set my timer when I started preaching up here, so I think I've been going about 20 minutes, Rhonda. Is that right? Somebody laughing. James chapter 1, verse 22 says, But be doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving yourself. Don't miss that, deceiving yourself. Okay? For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. And when he observes himself and he goes away and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. Let me tell you a true story that's funny. I used to be a manager for Home Depot, and I hadn't been in that position very long. And we were having a market tour from a new regional vice president or something like that. And I'd probably been at the store most of 2 days and ran home and, you know, took a quick shower the morning before she was coming. I'm wore out. And you know, she's got her whole entourage with her, and we've got our entourage all. and we're walking down the plumbing aisle in Home Depot before the store was open. She's looking at everything. And I reach up and touch my face. I didn't have a beard then, I only had a mustache. I reached up and rubbed my face, and this is what I realized. Remember, I'd been at the store for 2 days, hadn't even hardly been home. I realized immediately that when I went home to shower and get ready to come back to work, I'd only shaved one side of my face. True story. My wife will verify. True story. I only shaved one side of my face. And you know, she never did say, I know she noticed. I tried to keep turning away from her, you know. I didn't want her to see, but I thought, she must think, man, I've got $60 million worth of inventory that I've entrusted to this guy. Don't even know how to shave. Do you want to know what the problem was? The problem was this. The problem was I should have taken just a little bit more time to look at myself before I thought I was ready. If you want to know if you're ready, you know, if you want to know you're prepared, if you want to, whatever it is, there is a standard that you have, and this is it. And we need to hold ourselves up to not what the world says or somebody says or some preacher says, but we need to hold ourselves, we need to examine our lives against what this book says. And that's what James was talking about. You know, to be a hearer and not a doer. It said it's like a man that looks in the mirror and he sees what a mess he is and he walks away and he forgets it. It don't take me very long to read in this till I get convicted enough to realize what a mess I am and that I'm only half shaven sometimes. Y'all follow me? Does that make sense to anybody except me? And so, you know, diligent doers of the word, we got to be doers. And I'll bring this back on topic for you this morning by saying this to you. For you parents, grandparents, caregivers, assembly members who are around all these children, whatever, I'm going to tell you a secret. And I'm going to give you this for free. No extra charge. You are an example to the children around you, particularly you parents and grandparents, caregivers that are with children all the time. You need to know this and you need to understand, they watch what you say, they watch what you do, they know how you act when you come here. It's easy to come here on Sabbath and be around believers and get all holy, isn't it? Get cleaned up and come here and praise Yahweh. They see you and they know how you act. They also know how you act on Monday morning when you have to get up and go back to work. And they see you, like I've already admitted to you, when you're driving in traffic and somebody ain't going 80 miles an hour and you think they ought to be. And they witness you, and they, for the children, they live with us 24 hours a day, and you can fool everybody in this place into thinking that you're something that you're not. But you'll never fool your children because they know who you are intimately, because they see you in every area and aspect of your life. And that's why, and I'm not saying that to be ugly or to make you hurt your feelings. I'm saying that to say this to you, that you need to be such doers of the word that your children, that's all they see in you. And you're not going to be perfect. The only perfect family is another family you see here at the assembly on Sabbath. And the only reason they look perfect because you don't go home with them. And that's the only perfect children or somebody else's that you don't have to deal with. But your children are watching and they see you. And they know what you say. And sometimes when the things that you say and the things that you do don't line up, your children will may be the only people in the world who are not fooled by that. Does that make any sense? I hope that don't hurt anybody. Again, I'm not trying to convict you. I'm just saying that we have a great obligation to our children. An obligation to be diligent teachers to our children, to be diligent learners, and most important, when it boils right down to it and where the rubber meets the road, that we'd be diligent doers. Because that is what will make a difference in your children. It's not what you say. What makes a difference to your children is what you do. And I'm going to give you this last one for free, and I will hush. I could preach for another hour, but I will hush. Let me say this to you as well. There was much conversation in here this morning about, witnessing to people in the community and those sort. How do we share our faith to people who are not of our faith? If we're meeting here today and the Baptist church is meeting right down the road tomorrow, and we work with those people or we know those people in the community, how do we share our faith with those people? And know this. Just like your children know and see you, your neighbors know and see you. They know when you leave at 9:30 on Saturday and don't come back till 6 o'clock where you've been, don't they? They know you're not going to go eat pulled pork at the barbecue joint. They know you're not going to do that. They know, you understand? They know twice a week you're going to take a week off and come up here and camp. They know those things, and so I say all that to say this to you, that we need to preach the gospel always. And I heard somebody say, use words if necessary, right? Preach the gospel always and use words if necessary. What a great thing to live. Is that who said that? Didn't know him, but he was a pretty smart fella, Daniel. Preach the gospel always. Use words if necessary. People watch and people know. And we are to be salt and light. Right? That's what Yeshua said, we're to be salt and light. And there's been much said about that. And I don't know. Lots of people have a million different ideas about that. But this is what, I'm simple, mountain boy, and this is what I think. I think that there's two things in this world that are very much recognizable. You ever been lost at night and you see a light at home? Boy, you can see it for a mile. Me and my son used to play little pranks on one another. Kids don't do this. But this is what, we went for about a 6-month period when he was about 10 or 12 of if one of us leave the table and leave our drink on the table, we'd put a bunch of salt in it. He did that to me one time in my coffee, put a big old bunch of salt in my coffee. Stirred it up, and I came, sat down, Margie, and took a big old draw of that, and immediately I knew what it was. They didn't nobody have to tell me that was too much salt. It was easily recognizable to me, and so I say that to say this to you. When Yeshua says that we're to be salt and light, I think we're to be so unmistakably recognizable in the community that people will be attracted. Does that make sense? And if that's not what he meant, then it's a good analogy anyway. Maybe one day he'll tell me what he meant. But I know that we need to be an example to our children. And I pray that you are, but we need to be an example of this community as well. There's plenty of kingdom work to be done right here. You don't have to go to a foreign country to do mission work. I dare say Blue Ridge, Georgia, Murphy, North Carolina, McKaysville. I mean, anywhere within driving distance of this place should be our mission field. Because some of you drive an hour or 2 hours to get here, and even that, the whole world should be our mission field. If we're recording what we're doing here today, why should we not be trying to reach other people with the truth? Because if we really believe what we believe is the truth, then we should be sharing it with other people. But this doesn't work. It doesn't work to bust out your big Hebrew lexicon and beat them over the head. That doesn't work. But we can love them, and we can be an example to them, and we can live our faith, and we can show them that what we believe is right. And we can do what we think is right to be an example to them and to be an example to our children as well. Diligent teachers, sharpen your children. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do as parents and grandparents and caregivers. And you guys are blessed with children, and I know you're going to continue to be blessed with children here in this place. And pray for them, work with them, and never miss an opportunity to teach them about kingdom work. Do we agree? Amen.